The night I stopped being the family safety net was the night everything I had carried in silence finally snapped into place. And I did not even realize it was happening until I stood up and refused to keep playing the same role. My name is Maya Collins. I am 41 years old, and I work as a software engineer in Philadelphia. For most of my life, I was the one who observed everything and fixed everything. The dependable daughter, the responsible sister, the person who always said yes before anyone even finished asking. I built my identity around being useful to my family, even when it slowly erased me. I never questioned it because it felt normal like gravity. Until one dinner changed everything I thought I had to be. It was the end of the year, and my family chose a restaurant called the Hearth and Crown for our traditional gathering. The place was glowing with warm golden lights, decorated with evergreen garlands and soft holiday ornaments. The smell of cinnamon and roasted food filled the air, mixing with the sound of quiet music and glasses clinking. It looked perfect, almost staged for happiness. My parents arrived first. My younger sister Brielle came behind them with her 3 children, and my daughter Sophie stayed close to my side, holding onto my coat like she could feel something heavy in the air. Even before we sat down, the staff seemed to recognize me. The host greeted me by name and guided us toward a table near the fireplace without hesitation. A server followed with a polite smile and placed a thick leather menu in front of me before anyone else received theirs. I noticed the subtle change in the room. My father saw it too. His expression shifted slightly, not proud, not curious, more like unsettled recognition that I had become something he did not expect. Brielle smiled in a tight, confused way, pretending not to notice. My mother acted like everything was normal, but her eyes kept drifting toward me and then away. Sophie looked at the expensive menu with quiet curiosity but did not dare to touch anything. There was an invisible line between how the staff treated me and how my own family seemed to measure me, and that line suddenly felt very wide. When drinks were ordered, Brielle children started talking excitedly about lobster and king crab as if luxury food was already guaranteed for them. I stayed quiet, letting everyone talk, watching the patterns I had seen for years repeat themselves. My father cleared his throat in that familiar way he used when he was about to issue instructions instead of conversation. He then said that Sophie should be careful with her order and that her meal should not be expensive, because they were not planning to cover her cost that night. Sophie froze slightly at the edge of her menu. She did not complain, she just looked down. Something in my chest tightened, not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply familiar. It was not the first time I had felt it. It was the 1,000th time. But this time it did not settle back into silence like it always did. It stayed there, pressing against me, refusing to move. I nodded slowly and said I understood, but inside me something shifted. It felt like a locked piece finally sliding loose after years of pressure. I had spent my entire life in this pattern. I was the student who earned perfect grades, worked weekends, won scholarships, and never caused trouble. Brielle was always the one who was forgiven, excused, and rescued. When she crashed my father's car as a teenager, a newer one replaced it within days. When I asked for help with college tuition, I was told to be realistic and rely on myself. When Brielle dropped out of college, my parents paid for a full trip across Europe to help her find herself. I graduated while working night shifts and surviving on grants. I invited my family to my ceremony, but they were physically absent and only sent short apologies from another country. I stood on that stage alone, smiling like it did not matter. After I moved into my career in Philadelphia, the requests started coming more frequently. A damaged roof after a storm, unpaid property taxes, Brielle repossessed car. Every request came with urgency and emotional pressure. I told myself it was temporary help. I told myself I was supporting my family, but over time, it became a system I was trapped in. I kept a spreadsheet of every transfer, every payment, every date, not because I expected repayment, but because I needed proof that I existed in this dynamic. At a tech conference years ago, I met Ethan Carter. He was patient, calm, and observant. He noticed how often I checked my phone when messages arrived from home. He never judged me, but he eventually told me gently that I was allowed to say no. I laughed it off like it was simple, like it was something I could do anytime I wanted, but I never did. Sophie noticed more than I realized. She noticed when I canceled plans because of family requests. She noticed when I sent money and then went quiet afterward. She noticed the way my parents reacted differently to Brielle children compared to her. At one point, Sophie received a small birthday card while her cousin received an expensive tablet. On the drive home that day, she asked me why my parents did not seem to like her the same way. I did not have a good answer. Back at the restaurant, the moment my father made his comment about Sophie's meal, I felt something final shift inside me. Not anger that exploded, but clarity that settled in like cold air. I closed the menu slowly and looked at the server. I told him that the checks should be separated. I said that my payment would cover only myself and Sophie, and everything else should go to my family card. The room changed instantly. My father stared at me like I had spoken a language he did not recognize. My mother tightened her expression. Real eyes narrowed in confusion and irritation. The server nodded professionally and processed the change without hesitation. The machine printed the receipt with a soft sound that felt louder than everything else in the room. My father looked at the total and then at me, expecting me to fix it like I always did, expecting me to smooth it over, expecting me to return to my role. Instead, I stood up. I told Sophie to get her coat. She immediately came to my side, holding my hand tightly without asking questions. We walked past the fireplace, past the decorated tables, and past the life I had been silently funding for years. No one stopped us, no one followed. I could feel their eyes behind us, but I did not turn around. Outside, the cold air hit my face like a reset. Ethan was already waiting at the curb. He opened the car door for Sophie, and I saw her sit inside quietly, still processing what had just happened. I paused for a moment before getting in myself. Then I told Ethan I was done. It was not emotional or dramatic. It was calm, but it was absolute. On the drive home, I opened my banking apps one by one. I canceled the credit card I had been letting my parents use. I stopped automatic payments for their streaming services, their internet bill, their club membership, and their lawn care service. Each cancellation felt like releasing pressure I had carried for years. With every confirmation, I felt lighter in a way I did not fully trust yet. The next morning, my sister Brielle called and asked to meet for coffee. I agreed, not out of obligation, but curiosity about what she would say when the system no longer worked in her favor. When we met, I brought my printed spreadsheet. She flipped through it quickly at first, then slower as the numbers became undeniable. Her expression shifted from confusion to shock to something closer to discomfort. She said she did not realize the extent of it. I told her she never needed to realize because she never asked. That was the truth that had been sitting underneath everything for years. It was not just about money, it was about attention, expectation, and imbalance that no one wanted to name. After that meeting, I went home and muted every family contact. I did not block them, I simply removed their ability to interrupt my peace instantly. The silence that followed was strange at first. My phone felt too quiet. My routines felt unfamiliar, but slowly, something new began to form. Sophie started playing her violin again. One evening she practiced an entire piece without stopping. Ethan recorded it quietly while I sat nearby watching. Her focus, her confidence, her calm expression as she finished the final note filled the room in a way I had not felt in years. I clapped until my hands warmed, not because it was expected, but because I truly felt it. For the first time in my life, the peace around me did not feel borrowed or temporary. It felt like something I had finally earned by stopping myself from disappearing inside everyone else's expectations. And for the first time, I understood something simple but powerful. I was never just the one who helped. I was the one who carried everything, and I finally set it down.